So that brings us into manufacturing, which is like what most people are excited about. And then manufacturing is really interesting because like you could lose a lot of money in manufacturing if you're not careful. So like and my general approach and the way I kind of teach people is to rather like a lot of people do the cowboy approach, but I think it's better to like basically the really good business people and the manufacturers, they limit their risk as much as possible, and once they manage their risk as much as possible, then they're willing to take that risk. And I think I recommend that you go through that, and I'll have examples later on. But so once you start manufacturing, the first thing you have to do is locate a factory. So the best way to find a factory is through friends. So if you have a friend that's manufacturing something, and you like their product, and you say, hey, can you like refer me to your factory? I'd like to work with them. Can you give me a contact? That's a warm introduction. And then that factory, if they have a good relationship with your friend, then they'll welcome you in, and then basically, and maybe you even get to hang out with like the factory owner. And
as I say, and that's also one of the other reasons for the group, is because if we're all doing different kinds of manufacturing, and you need like a CNC manufacturer, then you can someone's working with someone.
Yeah, like so Alvin is working with a machining factory, and they do a lot of different types of machining, especially they have really good work with aluminum. And so if we ever do a project that needs aluminum machining, then I'll be like, hey Alvin, can you introduce me to somebody at your factory, and what do you think of them? What kind of prices should I expect? That's the ideal case. But if you're designing something and you're going in cold with no friends, and then yeah, which is like kind of pretty much all the time, then what you do is you have to go onto Alibaba. So on Alibaba, then the general way you do it is you try and locate as many factories as you can. Like I recommend 15 to 20 factories. Make sure they're all in like maybe the Shenzhen, Dongguan, Guangzhou area, like all within a localized area. Like find them, and then send out your requirements and request a quote from them, and then sift through and whittle it down to about five of the best quotes.
And a couple of things. The reason that you want them in the one area is because you actually want to go and visit the factory. So if you've got one factory that's up in Ningbo and then another one down in Guangzhou, that's a lot of travel. So it's much easier to try and throughout the whole production line, if you can, get them all in the one sort of area. Sometimes it's not possible because there's specialization areas, but see what you can do. The other thing is with the request for quotation, when you're submitting that, you kind of need to be quite precise in the details. So that's going. we have a saying that you get what you don't ask for. So if you don't ask for something, it'll come in. You're like, what's that doing?
If you don't ask for something, you're going to get the lowest possible cost solution for that.
So you want to try and be as precise as possible. You want to ask things like, do you outsource any part of the production to another company or another factory? And so and when we kind of go deeper in, we can talk more about some of the things that you would want to ask. And then generally, once you've selected the factories, you really want to go and visit them before you place any orders.
Yeah, and the outsourcing thing is actually a big issue because you can go visit the factory, and then like say you want to make like bags, and it's like, oh yeah we work with Nike, we work with North Face, we work with these huge brands, and you go look at them and it's like, yeah, they're working with these huge brands, and then they're like, sure, we'll take on your like 500 piece order too. And generally what happens is because it's not big enough to use their factory, they'll take on the order and they'll farm it out to a smaller factory, and then they'll farm it out to a smaller factory, take the and then for a lower cost, and they'll take whatever profit they can make off of that. But the thing is that if they don't do the proper quality control, or they leave it up to a smaller factory for the quality control, and then you have to deal with any consequences from that.
And Akiba just described exactly what happened to me the first time I did my print run.
Sorry?
The printer was very, very good machines, clean, worked with DKK, Nat Geo.
National Geographic.
My small little print run, yeah, we'll do it. They outsourced it, and there was no QC, so the whole run was basically a waste. And then I missed the Christmas thing, and anyway, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about that later.
It happens a lot. There's going to be a lot of war stories, and so like I think this meetup is also going to be a good place to swap war stories. You might notice that a lot of this is China-centric, but we're also trying to locate more factories in Japan, especially the smaller factories.
So just jumping in there, I'm trying to plan a local Tokyo manufacturing trip in December. So sometime between December 6th and December 16th. So there's a person I'll be working with called Taku, I forgot his last name, but he runs Tokyo Fab Hub. He's creating a network of small manufacturers in Tokyo who do precision CNC fabric, plastics. So I'll be exploring what's possible in Japan plus what the costs work out to. I think somewhere up to 6-7 people is what's a good size. So basically, anyone who's interested, let's just figure out how to get in touch after, because I would love to connect as many people as we can on this journey to figure out how to make stuff possibly locally.
Yeah. I think that'd be good. If it's possible to keep manufacturing local, then I'm all for it. I think the thing is that in China there's so much infrastructure built up. Like basically all the manufacturing resources in the whole world have moved to a specific area in China, and so like it makes it really, there's a huge economy of scale. But if we can do stuff out here, especially with quick turnaround, then that becomes really useful too. Okay, so once you locate your factory, then there's single factory manufacturing, and then working with multiple factories. So single factory manufacturing is if you're going to do something kind of simple. So like by simple, I mean I think like one factory that kind of internalizes all the different components, like book printers. Then basically they'll handle the book printing, they'll handle the book binding, they'll source the paper for you, things like that. That's going to be the easiest way to go. Or I think, so for, I guess we'll talk about it later, but then like,
So basically I'll work with several factories because of the different sets of expertise. But I think the interesting question around single factory manufacturing is sort of NDA IP stuff. If you want to worry about that, what's the right stance on that?
You mean? Oh, are you asking?
Like if because one factory can't take care of all of it, but what position do you want to take on giving someone all of your IP basically?
And that's a really good question, because actually a friend of ours does replica bike helmets, and he has the tooling at one factory, and then he does the actual decal at another factory, and then combines it at a separate factory because of IP issues.
Right.
And also because you're spreading your risk a little bit more. If one factory goes under and just shuts up,
right,
then and everything's there. Then so you got, I guess it's weighing that up.
So like I have a friend whose good friend works at does manufacture for Oakley, and how Oakley sunglasses, how they do it is they actually manufacture in different factories, but they create a different company per factory, so that each factory doesn't actually know that they're working directly with Oakley. And yeah. And it's really interesting because it really is it's a I guess efficiency to risk kind of equation, right?
Yeah.
So
I think you have to assume that like whatever you give to a factory, then there's always a possibility that it'll get knocked off. And by default, just assume that everything in China is open source. So single factory manufacturing, it'll be much simpler if you start out this way. Then like things should be easier. So if you do multiple factory manufacturing, that means that you're dealing with multiple factories in order to get different parts of your design. So this would be like maybe some technology design. So you have like a beautiful plastic enclosure. Like these are plastic injection molded toolings, like for plastic enclosures. So so you might have like a beautiful plastic enclosure, and then you're gonna have circuit board, then you're going to have like some packaging, and everything will need to come together. So you're going to need another process, which is final assembly. And so final assembly, generally, a lot of people talk about robots, but it's all done by hand. So final assembly is an expensive process because it's a manual process, and you're going to have to create a final assembly line and also train all the workers on how you're going to, or how you want them to assemble and also test for QA.
The other thing you can do is work with contract manufacturers who will manage that process for you. But if you're doing that, at each point you're adding another cost to your bottom line.
And also, like we work with a lot of indie designers and indie manufacturers, and so contract manufacturers don't make sense until you're doing about 5 to 10,000 units of something, and then and it needs to be fairly complex, and they're gonna take a decent margin off of you.
And one of the first questions I'll ask you is, what's your marketing like? Because for them, they want scale and they want to know that you can move it.
Yeah.
Hence the marketing bit at the beginning.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, they're gonna a lot of contract manufacturers will interview you before they take on your work, so you can't really just pay them to do it.
What do you think their MOQ is for a contract manufacturer?
It depends on the unit complexity and also the cost, like what kind of margin they're going to get. But generally, I would say that like so for, say you're going to do like a $50 to $100 retail price design, then they'll probably say about 10,000 units. So 10,000 units per year.
Right.
Like that's
per year, right? Not just one off.
Yeah.
Or actually, like 10,000 units per run is probably a better way to put it.
But they want repeated runs because it takes so much time to set up all the individual assembly lines and then to train the workers and so on. So there's a big investment up front for them to get the run.
Do you have any insight on how they vet that sort of decision? Like what do they look for? Like how do they come to a how do they judge I think you can do 10,000 repeatedly?
So like. So like say AQS. So this is a assembly line for one of our friends. It's a contract manufacturer called AQS. Oh, sorry. So they do a lot of Kickstarter designs. Basically, first of all, they're going to look at your Kickstarter funding. They're also going to interview you and see what kind of person you are. Because a lot of people if they can't get along with you, then it's going to turn into a mess. Or if you're like the type that they think if they run out of money and then you're not going to pay the factories, then that's going to be a problem for them.
And also, even, do you actually understand how the manufacturing process works? Because sometimes people will come in and say, I want it like that, and if it can't be manufactured like that, then so there is always a bit of give and take in the design changes that might need to happen.
Yeah, like the first time people manufacturing in Shenzhen, coming off like a big Kickstarter, but if they have no clue about how manufacturing works, a lot of times they have unrealistic expectations. So like one guy that did like a book lamp and wanted like the most beautiful, perfect wood for the lamp, and then they said, oh, actually we can only get this wood, and with your budget you can only afford this type of wood, and he said that's unacceptable.
Caveat. So not caveat. Like footnote. Apparently, sourcing wood for manufacturing in China is actually very hard. And apparently that's easier if you do it, I guess in Malaysia or Bali or some other place. But I guess it's just hard for China to source good wood for whatever reason.
Yeah, because the sourcing, actually, I think it's better if you can source those sorts of materials yourself.
Right.
Because one, you know where they're coming from, so
right.
you're able to kind of vet for in our case, is it FSC, so Forestry Stewardship Council certified paper. So when it's important in the end of the design, I would recommend doing that.
So
paying import taxes, but anyway, that's a whole thing.
So my point with the multiple factory manufacturing is that it's going to be a lot of money, and so then you have to start thinking about how you're going to fund it, and a lot of times that requires external funding. Whereas like if you're doing single factory manufacturing, then you might be able to do a run of 500 pieces or 1,000 pieces and just fund it yourself.